Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the BFNL Footy Show for another week. Fantastic to have you joining us once again here on the BFNL website to go through all of the latest happenings in the Red Onion Creative Ballarat Football Netball League. My name's Shaun Kelly, and joining me this week isn't Liam Brady, as we heard last week, sunning himself up in far north Queensland at the moment. So we thought we'd get in an expert, an absolute bona fide expert, the coach of the Sebastopol Footy Club joins us this week. Shane Snibson. Snibbo, thanks for joining us, mate.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure having you along here. And your boys going okay this year as well. Obviously, the 2 wins for the year up to round 10 from a lot of football clubs wouldn't be a highlight, but for the Sebastopol Footy Club and where your club's been over the last 5 years, it is a definite step forward.
Yeah, there's no doubt we're making improvement, and we've got a long way to go, Shaun, but we're really pleased to get to 2 wins at this stage of the season, and we're certainly eyeing another couple of wins off between now and the end of the year. Yep, for sure.
Have you set a benchmark for the year as to where you want to be from a win-loss point of view?
Not really. We're just looking to improve because we are a fair way back, and a year and a half ago when I joined the club, we averaged about 100-point loss every week. So we've certainly set our sights around trying to kick a few more goals and definitely stopping the opposition kicking goals, and I think we've done that a bit this year. But our journey's still got a fair way to go. And a coach is always impatient around improvement. So we're pleased and acknowledge that there's been improvement, but we're certainly got a long way to go, and we're still working hard to get better.
And you mentioned that journey, and that's very much what you signed up for when you came on board, wasn't it? The fact that it may not happen overnight, but it's going to be maybe a 4 or 5 year process to get Sebastopol back up into that kind of top rung.
Yeah, and you're never quite sure. We don't limit the improvement, and even this year, we've found improvement within games. Some of the stronger sides aren't, blowing us away in first quarters, and we're competing for longer. So certainly we're looking for consistency in games. And since our low against Sunbury, which is our worst performance for the year, the last month's been much better against good opposition. And naturally, that was capped off by that probably an upset win against Darley, but one that we really could see coming and needed to show progress.
Talk to us about that day, because obviously that has been the high watermark of your season so far, and you're right, one that probably none of us and nobody really outside your footy club would have expected to take on the reigning premiers and knock them over in what ended up being a fairly low scoring game for the day, but was reasonably high scoring early on in the day as well, and then you managed to really shut the game down.
Yeah, it's sort of hard to sort of see how these things come to fruition, but no doubt our defence has got better this year, and we've been pretty stable down there, and we were just able to thwart the Darley attacks. Conditions were heavy, and in some ways attitude to attack a contest and make it a game and put tackle pressure on and get numbers around the ball in those sort of conditions can help you. And there's no doubt once we got to half time and competed for 15 minutes in the third quarter and got a couple of goals early in the third, that then the game was on, and then some belief grew in the group, and the group started to see, well, maybe we can, if we keep playing this brand of footy, it'll hold us in good stead. And then, Darley sort of had a bit of misfortune at 3/4 time to have a couple of guys sent off for 10 minutes, but we just managed to hang on the last quarter. And what was really apparent is once we started to believe we could win in the third, that our footy got better, our connectivity, our clangers reduced, and there's a bit of belief into the group. So I think it was the belief that came as a result got nearer that it was possible, and a couple of really good performances there. But generally everyone did their job, and that's sort of a young group. We have some ups and downs most weeks, but on that day most guys came to play, and that showed in the result.
And I think that's the thing, you mentioned the ups and downs that we've seen this year, and you see a lot with young footy teams as well, that you will have those peaks and troughs, and you've seen it this year where you've had games where you're right in it in the first quarter and you're still in it at half time, but then the boys fade off for 15 minutes, and against there's such an even league this year that's got so many good sides in it, you almost can't afford to do that.
No, you definitely need to be playing well, particularly where we're coming from. So we can't have an off day and get a win. We need everyone to do their job. So some of the stronger teams might have a few guys off and still get the job done, and we can't get away with that.
Young players really starting to stand up. I've been impressed with Jack McNabb this year. He's played some really good footy, not just at Sebastopol level, but also at interleague level as well, and is really one that you can build a side around in future years, I think. Yeah,
his last month's been really good. Early in the year, we were playing a bit taller in the back line, and he was sort of getting some jobs on some smaller opponents. And over the last month, given the conditions, we've gone a bit shorter, which has sort of got him on better opponents. And his ability to just sort of intercept mark and give supporters an extra in the back line's been really good. So his first year out of under-18s, he needs to do a lot of work in the gym, but he's on the right track and he's a good kid around the footy club.
And Michael Powell coming back into the side really in the last 3 or 4 weeks really gives you another target and straightens you up forward. And we saw it in that game against Darley as well.
Yeah, well, against Darley, so for those that have seen Powell play, he's quite an exciting player, but he plays a full forward role, but he's really light and a small player. And against Darley, we were able to move the footy inside 50 a bit quicker and get him one out at times, and he was effective. Whereas on the weekend at Redan, we played a bit slower and they got numbers back, and it was really hard for Powell to compete with numbers around him. So if we can move the footy quicker, because we do need to improve our scoring, that's something we were quite disappointed with on the weekend against Redan. So, the inside 50 count last week was around 45 to 56,
which is about where you want it.
Which is sort of, you're in the game at times if you can be efficient inside 50. And in the third quarter, we sort of controlled play for 15 minutes and only scored 3 points. Whereas a good team, when they get momentum and control play, will kick 5 or 6 goals. So we've still got a fair bit of work and tinkering to be done on sort of forward of centre, how we can get more out of Powley. And obviously getting Toby Hutt back soon will help us with our forward structure.
Yeah, because he, especially early on in the season, he's been a real live wire up forward for you as well, Toby. And again, having Toby at centre half forward and Powley at full forward really gives you a good structure.
It does, and what the good teams tend to have, Shaun, is they have balance in what they put out on the park. So you look at North City, Jordan Burke, an effective goal kicker, tall, and then Derek Mikuliff, wing forward, complements quite well. You look at Sunbury, a small forward in Lant, being complemented by some of the Sunbury talls, and even to some extent Lakers having Pring kicking a lot of goals as a small lively forward with a Pitson and Tom Carey and others. They've got good balance and a range of options. And it was interesting to see Redan on the weekend in the last quarter through Chester forward, and then that just throws another dynamic into what they can put on the park, having Reardon missing. So it's flexibility, and that's still where we're trying to grow, is I guess a stronger list and some more flexibility on game day. So you can, as a coach, pull different levers on who's going well, how do we isolate something that might be to our advantage against an opposition, and we're still finding at the moment we're a little bit restricted there, but hopefully into the future that grows for us.
How'd you find it on the weekend coming back to the City Oval, coaching against Gilly and coaching against the Redan side?
Yeah, it was a little bit strange. We didn't play at the City Oval last year. We only played Redan once, and it was nice to have a catch up with some of those guys in the rooms in the den after the game, and I look forward to our 10-year premiership reunion at Redan in a couple of weeks' time. So, we've got a healthy relationship between the two clubs, and it was strange, but my job's to coach Sebastopol Footy Club, so it wasn't that. My focus was clearly on the job with my club now.
Well, let's have a look at round 11 in the BFL, mate. And we'll start with your game this week, taking on Bacchus Marsh at Marty Bush Reserve. No doubt that this is a challenge, but you could almost look at it in the same light as that Darley game, where if you get on top early, the condition, obviously with the weather as it is at the moment, it likely could be reasonably heavy conditions at Marty Bush Reserve this weekend. So you give yourself a chance if you jump on top early. Yeah,
well, our last sort of 3 weeks of footy, even against Redan and Easter to some degree, we now hold no fears against the teams above us. No doubt we have to play really well to get into a game at three-quarter time to have a chance to win. But we hold no fears playing Bacchus Marsh. They comfortably accounted for us in the last round last year, but a lot's changed. Their team's changed a fair bit. A number of their guys haven't necessarily played in some cold weather in Ballarat in July, and we look forward to giving them a Marty Bush welcome on the weekend. But we go into the game with some confidence. We sustained some good form on the weekend against Redan, and if we can just tweak our forward movement to get some more scoreboard pressure on early when we've got control, then we give ourselves a good chance.
Obviously, looking at that Bacchus Marsh side, there's a lot of different areas to really try and clamp down on this weekend. Is there any in particular that you're going to be looking at? Obviously, you look at Damien Cupido, who's been pretty well held in recent weeks, but they can rotate Cam Richardson through, Alec Del Papa, Jared Maximo through that forward line. They've got some goal-kicking power up there.
Yeah, they have, and but our backline's been our strength this year, and we'll go in with some matchups that we think suit our players. But we don't worry. Sure, we get some good matchups for the forwards and who we'd prefer, but our improvement's about what we do. So in the past, our inability to sort of maintain possession or get flow with the ball has made scoring opportunities easy for the opposition. So in some ways, And all the coaches will know your offense connects up to how your defense works.
Correct.
So our main focus is to control the play, have it up our end, and get into a bit of a territory war where it's inside our forward 50 where we're in control.
Yep.
And then that renders the Cupidos and those types a bit useless in terms of goal scoring because we've got the footy up our end, we've got our structure set up, we've got a +1 behind the ball, and we can actually defend well.
Yep.
Whereas if we're getting beaten around the ball, bad turnovers, then it doesn't matter what back line you've got, they'll be effective.
They're going to be under pressure.
Particularly Richardson, who moves very well for a guy that's 6'2". So he's the one that we've found difficult to match up on in the past, and we look forward to some of our improved defenders having another go at him this weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be some pretty big games around the ground as well. So I'll get your opinion on some of these games and the teams involved as we go along. Ballarat taking on Melton South at the Alfred and Oval this week. Obviously, Ballarat going along okay without setting the world on fire this year, and Melton South have shown that they've got a bit of work to do this year. You played both of these teams early on and went very well against Melton South and went okay against Ballarat for 3 quarters in the game. How do you see this game panning out?
Yeah, I think I went and had a look at Ballarat played Melton on a Sunday a couple of weeks ago, and Ballarat were really poor in the first quarter, and it was 8 goals to 1 down, but it only ended up going down by 16 points. And against North City last week, they were only a couple of goals down at 3/4 time. So I'd see them on their home deck should comfortably win. Melton South, though, to their credit, do seem to score quite well against some of the teams. So Ballarat will have to play well. They have a reasonably healthy list at the moment, Ballarat. I know they've got one of their Hughes or Paling, I think, might have missed last week as a tall, but generally their running types should go quite well. And Hutchison not being in the best on the weekend, you'd expect he would want to, get a good output.
He's normally not too far away
That's
from an old
right.
Hutch. Tipping in this game?
I think Ballarat would go in favour.
Yeah, Ballarat, I'm tipping in this one as well. Really interesting game at the Eastern Oval this week as well. East Point taking on Darley. East Point, probably one of the more interesting results last weekend, and you'd probably fairly say an upset, taking on Sunbury and defeating them up there, whilst Darley kind of getting their mojo back a little bit against Melton. And at the moment, it very much looks like these two fighting for 6th position.
Yeah, I think no doubt they're fighting, but there's more on the line for Darley in this game than there is for East.
Yep.
Darley's percentage is a bit under East, and Melton that they're fighting for 6th place, and their run home is a bit tougher. It was certainly, I'd say, it's an upset East Point to win. They've made some tough calls at the selection table last week, and I think that's their groups responded. So Murphy and Banwell went back and played reserves footy.
Yep.
Murphy got a few goals. He's a VFL listed player,
Correct.
and they've made some tough calls there. So I think you'd expect if East are to contend with the teams above them, which they have at times, they need more consistency. This is a game they need to win to start to shore up 6th spot. And you'd like to see, I think they've had to balance a number of VFL players in and out this year, and I think they haven't yet settled on their best team. So I think East Point would be favourites, but they have been probably the most inconsistent team this year.
They also match up pretty well against Darley, but having said that, the last time Darley was on the Eastern Oval, we saw what happened that day. The grand final last year, they took control early and didn't look back, and we know that if they get that going, that they can be really, really dangerous.
They can, but I don't think Wilkes would be too worried about a game from 9 months ago. And Darley's team's turned over a fair bit. It's just a test for Darley that with their season pretty much on the line, given their run home, can they bring the right attitude up the highway to get the job done. But you'd favour East Point this week.
Melton taking on Lake Wendouree at McPherson Park this week. The Lakers going along pretty well, as we know, undefeated at the moment. And Melton just starting to plateau a little bit this year. They weren't too bad last week against Darley, but they need to start turning honourable losses into wins if they want to play finals footy.
They do. They've been a little inconsistent as well. No doubt Lakers would go in favourites, but at some point I think they'll drop a game. I think some injuries that they've had, when's the week that might bring them undone. So Lucas Anson going down is a massive loss for them in terms of their structure and just his experience. You'd think Lakers would be favourite. Melton always play a bit better at home, and on their day have performed well, but Lakers would have to go in favourite.
Yeah, Lakers, I think, for this one as well. And then the last game for the week at Eureka Stadium, North Ballarat City taking on Sunbury. Sunbury obviously looking to rebound back onto the winners list, but it's not going to be an easy task against the North City side that are pretty good this year. Obviously, talk of their regression they probably haven't regressed about as far as what a lot of people would have thought, and they play Eureka Stadium very, very well.
They do. No doubt Sunbury and Rick will be licking their wounds from last week and we're wanting to respond. I just see these two teams very different. So North City don't have a lot of height, a lot of outside run and pretty polished on the outside. whereas Sunbury have a different structure totally. So I see this as sort of two different structures coming together. You'd favour North City at home. But I just wonder, in the lead up to finals, North City's depth in their list will be tested at some point. They've been able to overcome injuries thus far, but they need to keep a healthy list to be able to compete in September, whereas I think Sunbury got a bit more depth.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting week coming up in the Ballarat Football Netball League. Snibbo, thanks for joining us, mate. It's great having another voice on there, and I suppose a different way of looking at things and that more analytical side of things, which we've absolutely loved hearing from you today.
No worries, my pleasure.
It's been an absolute pleasure having Shane Snibson joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure having you join us as well on the BFNL Footy Show again this week. We'll be back next week. Liam Brady might get back into the side if he's lucky enough. We might have to bring him through the reserves, but we'll make that decision as we go along throughout the week. Join in next week and find out what's happening. We'll see you then.